Another way of easily doing this is actually just setting up these interaction models as well as the null model. That's not as simple as just looking at the output that R gives you, but that's essentially what's being done here. So here I have my full model, which is the interaction model. Now here I have the null model. So again, this is where I have no covariates. I just have 1 as my intercept. And I can look here and actually calculate the deviance for the null model, which again is going to be 2,651. That's what we got before, right? So R is already thinking about this, and you don't technically have to run the null model, but I just wanted to show you that this is in fact what's actually going on. And so what we can see here is that our p-value is much smaller than our critical threshold. And so we can conclude that at least one of these predictors is reliable in our model. And in fact, based on the previous module, we know exactly which one of those it is. But let's just say that we don't. And so the first thing I want to do is just go over the individual tests for coefficients again. So we have rejected the global null, so let's consider going through each of these. And again, we did this last time, but just in case we didn't, I want you to know how to do this. And so looking at the estimated coefficients here from the logit regression, we can see that Republican is the only significant and reliable predictor. And this is given that we have accounted for the number of girls that a judge has. Now, that is one way that we can test for different slopes, right? We see that in fact the interaction is not statistically reliable. And so that indicates to us that we don't really need to have that. But just to double check, I want to show you how to formally make sure that that interaction doesn't need to be there, in which case we don't need different slopes. So under the null hypothesis, we're going to say that we don't need different slopes. It's just an additive model where the number of girls, the effect that the number of girls has on your propensity to decide in a feminist direction is not different if you're a Republican or a Democrat. So our alternate then is the effect of having girls is going to be different by party. Now, what we can do is in our null model, we're just going to have the additive model. And in our full model, right, because we have both the constituent terms and the interaction, that's the full, it has 3, not 2, we're going to have our interaction. And we can see that our p-value is quite high. And we can conclude that there's not evidence that including this interactive effect of having party and the number of girls, that is not a significantly reliable predictor of the odds for deciding in a feminist direction. Now we knew that based on the previous table of the estimated coefficients, but again, this is just providing further evidence to that point. Now that we know we should be using an additive model instead of the interaction model, let's actually run that. So here we have the estimated coefficients from the additive model where we just are using any girl. So 1 is any girl, 0, no girls, plus whether or not judges were appointed by a Republican or a Democratic president. And so now what's kind of interesting is both of our predictors are statistically reliable. So in the first case here, we can see that having any girls increases the propensity of individuals to decide in a feminist direction. And controlling for that, Republicans still seem to have a negative impact or a negative propensity to decide in a feminist direction.